Now, that was a late, long night in Greenville, North Carolina. That is the best way I can describe it. And this 2024 Florida Atlantic football season definitely has hit a low point in this campaign. And it is a season where the main goal has not been met, and I think by definition, this is a lost season for Florida Atlantic. This is the Florida Atlantic Voice. This is the Inside FAU podcast. And subscribe, get it wherever you get your podcast, presented as always by our title sponsor, Robes Law Group, in the community for you. ROBES, offices in Delray Beach. Robes Law Group, robeslawgroup.com. There are not a ton of bright, sunshiny things I'm going to be telling you on this Friday after what was extremely humbling, what was at times worrisome, troubling, obviously heart wrenching for Cam Fancher. I'm sure for many fans, a bit embarrassing, but this was a fairly non-competitive Florida Atlantic football team. I'm saying non-competitive because FAU fought. There was no white flag. There were not moments I felt that it looked like the early fourth quarter against USF, where it seemed as if this football team was resigned to its fate, at least some within that group. This team kept fighting, kept battling. Things kept getting more lopsided, but they were still getting after it. But to have issues compound and the deficit grow larger, that means by definition, you just were not competitive. And Florida Atlantic, for a second straight game and on national television, unable to put up much of a fight. It was the second half last week against USF. This was start to finish against East Carolina. And so now Florida Atlantic for a fourth straight season, not going to go to a bowl game, not going to hit the 6-win mark for a fifth consecutive year. And I will admit I am as surprised as anybody that this team just never found a way to get consistent, never found a way to get over the hump, never really found a way to win in tough circumstances. The 2 wins this year against an FCS team in Wagner and then FIU. And it's pretty shocking. I thought there was no question that this team was going to be able to achieve 6 wins. It was a matter of how many more wins after that. And now Florida Atlantic in the final 3, you're trying to pick off a couple to grab some momentum to get into 2025. This one, though, this one hurts, I think, the most. This one stings the most. You had the loss to Army where they just out-executed you, and you still hung in. The defense finally cinched it up after going down 14-0. The offense was able to score in the second half, but just unable to break through. But it turns out you played closer with Army than anybody in the American's been able to do this year. We didn't know that Army was, Army the way they are at that point. So in retrospect, that was a big moral victory. UConn was painful, no resistance against that run game, but again, it was a non-conference game. It certainly felt bad. It certainly left a pit in your stomach. It really carried over. There was a little bit of a what the hell happened hangover there. But again, that was non-conference. That was not in American play. But now in American Athletic Conference play, you've got 3 games you led at halftime. North Texas, UTSA, USF. You lost all of those. North Texas in the final 3.5 minutes. UTSA in the fourth quarter. And USF in the second half. and then this was a no show right off the jump. And again, when I say that, I want to be very, very clear. There was no quit in this team. There was no surrender in this team. They didn't execute. They didn't play winning football, but they went out and kept fighting. And I think that if there's any consolation from last night, and I know that a lot of you are not in the mood to discuss consolation, but trust me when I tell you, coaching staffs do look at that because it helps them evaluate who's still with us, who we want to continue to be with us when you are getting your brains beaten in, who's still out there throwing haymakers, hoping to connect. Like, that stuff does matter. It does matter, because in this spot, it's well past just worrying about, on its face, the wins and losses, because the wins and losses don't matter anymore. It's who can we ride with in 2025. Hell, who can we ride with in the final 3 games of the season? So again, that does matter. That definitely does matter. 49-14 the final in this one. 21-0 first quarter for East Carolina, but I honestly think this game was over 24 seconds in. Florida Atlantic has not erased a deficit greater than 7 all season long, and last night was going to be no different. FAU goes down 7-0, 24 seconds into the game. 2 plays. You start with a 25-yard end around to get you to midfield, and then Kaden Hauser, who was enormous last night. I mean, that's one of the single best individual quarterbacking performances I've ever seen against Florida Atlantic. And I've seen outstanding performances from the likes of Dowdy at Western Kentucky. In fact, insert Western Kentucky quarterback here, Mike White. We've gone to Alabama. We've gone to Auburn the year they went to a BCS title game. Georgia. I saw Kirk Cousins in person. Michigan State go against FAU. It was nothing like this. This was absolutely dominant from Kaden Hauser, who, by the way, this is only his second straight start. His second start of the year. Former Michigan State guy, a Michigan State transfer, playing behind Jake Garcia, who was at South Carolina. Jake Garcia started all year long, and it took the head coach, Mike Houston, getting fired and the interim to come in to get Hauser some playing time. And it just makes you wonder, Kaden Hauser, how he wasn't the starting quarterback. What didn't he do in fall camp to beat out Jake Garcia? I suppose it's because Jake Garcia probably got a significant amount of NIL, and they said, all right, Jake, job is yours. But, man, Kaden Hauser, 17 of 22, 343 yards, 5 touchdowns through the air, a rushing touchdown of 36 yards. I mean, that was insane. But 24 seconds in then, Hauser with a deep ball, and he's able to pick out Soul, one of a collection of really talented receivers for East Carolina. And 2 plays in, 24 seconds in, it's 7-0. This first quarter was really sort of a microcosm of the season for FAU. Especially the last 3 weeks, I would say, when FAU is playing its most losing style of football. Whether we're talking the collapse against North Texas, we're talking about fourth quarter UTSA, and we're talking about second half against USF. Florida Atlantic gets the ball down 7-0, a little bit of shell shock being hit for that deep ball 24 seconds in. And I know that Day Hill has taken some heat, the veteran corner. He allowed 3 of those touchdowns last night, but I'm not going to sit there and heap blame on Day Hill, nor should you. He's out there trying to play with a bad ankle that's really been bothering him. He doesn't have Cameron Goggins, who started in his place against USF because of injury. So Day Hill, like a true leader, is trying to give it a go. You could tell he was hobbled by that ankle, and he ends up getting beat. But I respect the guy for going out there, knowing it was going to be a tough task, and still giving the effort. I want to come to Day Hill's defense with that. Unfortunately, he ran into a buzzsaw because you had an ultra accurate quarterback who was feeling himself, and these receivers that were flying around, and it was a bad confluence of events. East Carolina may be hitting its apex of offensive execution all year long, and Day Hill is facing the full brunt of that thing. Just standing in the middle of that East Carolina Pirate hurricane, and the eye wall's coming his way, and there's nothing he can do about it. But Florida Atlantic gets the ball after going down 7-0. Back to my original point, and they get a 3rd and 1. And what happens? They don't get it. Florida Atlantic has been horrid on 3rd down this season, and again can't get a 3rd and short. A 3rd and 1. Run to the right, no blocking, and the play is blowing up. C.J. Campbell can't go anywhere, and boom, you have to punt. East Carolina gets the ball back, 3 plays, and then it's a 47-yard touchdown. And this time it is Caden Hauser to Winston Wright. And he catches it at around the 20, just turns on the burners, races by Day into the end zone. 5 plays from scrimmage for East Carolina, and it's 14-0. And I thought the game was probably done 24 seconds in. It's 7-0. Just how shocking and jaw-dropping that start was, but it was definitely over at that point. FAU was not going to erase a 14-0 deficit, and then it was 21-0 by halftime. Another big play touchdown. Another Wright score. He had 2 touchdowns in this one. Another Caden Hauser touchdown pass. And it's a spot where I definitely thought back against the wall, urgency kicking in, have to win out. An East Carolina team that, yes, came in 4-4, but none of those wins do you say to yourself, yeah, that's impressive. That's a message sender. Their most impressive win coming against a bad Temple team that FAU has next. And you thought for sure you were even with this team and you could deliver some shots to them and back them off, even under the lights. They're wearing all black. They've got their theme night. And no, East Carolina was the significantly better team. So back against the wall, need to win out, need the ultimate urgency, need to play with desperation, and to be down 21-0 in the snap of a finger, to be down 7-0 in 24 seconds, 14-0 in 5 plays, and 21-0 after 1. That was, to me, stunning. That was stunning. And I don't know if, because I understand the angry, frustrated fan will say, well, that's a lack of preparation. I don't know that, though. I don't know that to be true. You can prepare all you want, and you can consume all the information you want and understand clearly how to apply that coaching, but then it becomes a mental fight after all that preparation leads you to being dinged for a home run score 24 seconds into a football game. Like, think about that. That's pretty demoralizing, right? It's like your garage door is broken, right? And you realize it's an issue with the chain to pull it up. So you go out to Home Depot and you buy what you need, and you go out and you spend like 2 hours trying to fix this, replace it on your own, a little DIY, do it yourself. You do everything. You follow the instructions. The neighbor comes over, says, yep, looks good. You go to test it, and the garage door just falls off the track and falls to the ground. Like, that's demoralizing. You put all the preparation in, put all the work in, but it still led to a negative result, and it's tough to overcome that. In your situation, you're swearing, dropping F words, you're going and grabbing the nearest beer, trying to settle yourself. In FAU's case, you're sitting there trying to collect yourself while East Carolina is just dump trucking you. It's hard. It's hard to pull it together. And by the time FAU did finally pull it together, it was over. It was over. And there was nothing that could be done. Hence the season now over for Florida Atlantic. And then there's Cam Fancher. And I feel so badly for Cam. He came in with a lot of pressure on him. Tom Herman has talked about it repeatedly, the highest paid player on this FAU roster with NIL. And for the exception of first half against USF and first half against North Texas, Cam has just not been able to find the type of groove and offensive acumen that he knows he possesses. We know he possesses. He would love to continually tap into it, just never found a way to come to fruition this year. And it's not all Cam Fancher's fault. It's not all Cam Fancher's fault at all. The offensive line has not done him any favors. The massive mash unit injuries with that wide receiver room, where now Amari Hayes is your quote-unquote number one receiver, who wasn't even necessarily expected to be a part of the regular wide receiver rotation going into the year. And Amari's done a really nice job taking on that role. But certainly the plan was for him to get more seasoning before he got thrust into a role that he's currently in. And it's been a very trying year for Cam Fancher, and very sad that it's going to end like this, where Cam Fancher breaks his collarbone after being sent to the ground after unleashing a pass in the first quarter after a 4-6 start for 68 yards. You knew that it was pretty serious right away. He was in an immense amount of pain, kicking his legs on the turf. The trainers came out. It took Fancher forever to actually get up and be able to get into the cart and be taken off the field. And his season's done. And I don't know what the future holds for Cam Fancher. I'm sure he doesn't really know what the future holds for Cam Fancher. You can say all you want about Cam, and we can discuss the uneven play or the issues really getting this offense humming in any meaningful way on a regular basis. But Cam Fancher is an absolute tough guy in every sense of the term. I mean, what an absolute warrior. Even if he's not playing excellent football, how could you not want to play for that guy? I mean, he got pushed around and slammed around and bashed and hit late and abused and punished and bruised and battered. And what did he do? He got up and continued to work every play if he could find his balance, if he could find the strength to get on his 2 feet. There is no doubting the toughness at all of Cam Fancher. It is not to be doubted. It is not to be questioned. And it's only to be appreciated. And I hate that his season is concluding like this. He deserves better. So Cam Fancher is done for the year with that broken collarbone. And perhaps the only positive on the night, and you can really get into some of the minutia of the game to find other positives for sure, but the most notable positive of the night was Kasen Weisman in relief of Cam Fancher. Kasen Weisman goes 20 of 35, throws for 2 touchdowns, did toss a pick in the end zone that I think was a miscommunication between him and Amari Hayes. but a 115.4 passer rating. I thought Kasen Weisman showed some really consistent flashes of a guy that Florida Atlantic could absolutely do something with in 2025 and could surely find an awful lot about in the last 3 weeks of the season to really make that final determination. But Kasen Weisman, I know we felt bullish on him, positive about him in the time he played second half against Wagner. This far exceeded that. Kasen Weisman showed off mobility. He showed off good football IQ. He showed off that rocket missile-esque right arm. He showed the ability to put touch on the football and lob it over the defense. He showed the ability to conduct 2 sustained touchdown drives. I thought Kasen Weisman, in a lopsided loss, a blowout loss, a rout, I thought Kasen Weisman shone brightly. And if you're an FAU fan today and you are upset, you're bleary-eyed, you're frustrated, you're swearing off FAU football for the rest of the season, just know that number 12, he has a big chance to make a big statement in the last 3 weeks. And if there's anything you're going to latch on to over the last 3 weeks of the season, it should be this continued progression, this positive arc that it appears Kasen Weisman is on. 20-35, 188, 2 touchdowns. And he was good. He belonged. He was comfortable. East Carolina came in top 10 in the nation in tackles for loss. And Kasen Weisman had pressure on him an awful lot. And he found ways to get out of the pocket and make winning throws and extend plays and make smart decisions, not just throwing it willy-nilly all over the yard, actually trying to pick out receivers. It was a good showing from Kasen Weisman. I'm not just trying to desperately dig a positive from this. No, he was a concrete positive. Certainly a reason to at least pay passing attention to Florida Atlantic here in the last 3 weeks of the season, all right? Unfortunately for Florida Atlantic, they get to within 21-7. Jabari Smith, a touchdown pass from Kasen Weisman at 2 yards. But East Carolina, a couple of big plays at the end of the first half, including a really long 64-yard pass play on an absolute dot again from Hauser. He was so good last night. He was stellar. It was, again, one of the singular best college football quarterbacking performances I've seen in person. And it came from Caden Hauser last night, just really doing whatever he wanted. It was that strong. But it was Smith, Anthony Smith, racing down the field on a perfect pass down the seam, and Smith's able to run past the last defender and get stopped at the 1 yard line. It could have been 6 touchdown passes for Hauser. And then Rajay Harris, I should say, pops it in from a yard out, 28-7 at halftime. And any pulse was gone at that point. FAU was flatlined there. So, I mean, we know what happened in the second half after that. FAU hit with a couple more big plays. Hauser had a 36-yard touchdown run of his own on a keeper, an RPO keeper. And that was that. And that's the season. And East Carolina beats Florida Atlantic 49-14. Going back to the Fancher injury for a second, I know that there were some on social media and some fans who had reached out to me that were really upset that no flag was thrown for a late hit. Chris Newbold and I talked about it in the broadcast booth, and we both felt like the shove to Fancher after he threw the football was quick enough where the officials were fine not throwing a flag. An unfortunate injury. Was it a bit aggressive based on the moment? Yeah. But I, in real time and then watching the replay, didn't think that there was any need for a flag there. Where there should have been a flag was the first Logan Lupo punt, where I don't know how he got it away without it getting blocked. He had a punt rusher basically on top of him and somehow got away a big booming punt with the East Carolina special teams player basically hovering over him after he went airborne. Lupo gets it away. Lupo then takes a Goldberg-esque spear to the chest. Shout out WCW. That version of Goldberg, not the WWE version. And how there was not a flag there is beyond me. The punt rusher did not get any contact on that football at all. That would have negated a roughing the kicker. So how Lupo doesn't get that call, how a flag's not thrown, how FAU's not awarded a first down, it's a travesty. It's bad officiating, okay? It wouldn't have changed the outcome, but it might have kept East Carolina from getting the ball back and immediately finding the end zone again. Maybe the trajectory of the game changes a bit. So that was nonsense. That was absolute nonsense. That is a missed call. That is a lack of doing one's job if you're wearing a striped outfit out there on the field. As far as the season is concerned as a whole, it's a lost year. Florida Atlantic did not meet what I felt to be its really only objective, and that's win 6 games. They're not going to do that. And so that is that's a lost year. And I'm going to, in the coming weeks, ask Tom Herman where he feels further foundation has been laid with this program in this 2024 season. And maybe that's more of a question to be asked after the finale against Tulsa on the 30th. But I think that that's something for us to explore here on this podcast over the next couple of weeks is where has more concrete hardened with this foundation? Because right now, I mean, I know that the answer to that seems cloudy. And there's still 3 games left to go. And if Kasen Weisman continues to progress, if Amari Hayes continues to progress, then you say, there we go. Yeah, that's for sure. Right now, and maybe it's just the magnitude of the loss, you're trying to grasp a little bit for that. And you're still trying to process the fact that FAU is going to miss a bowl game for a 4th straight year. But last week, USF goes well over 500 yards. East Carolina goes over 500 yards. There's no doubt that the defense has fallen apart the last couple of weeks. The defense, which more often than not played winning football, kept Florida Atlantic in games, put the team in a position to win the vast majority of the season. It has succumbed to injuries and lack of depth and being overpowered the last couple of weeks. And that's not just eye test, that's tangible now with the amount of yards that side of the ball has given up. Tom Herman talked about injuries after the game, and I mean you're missing so many players. Day-Day Hill's hobbled, no Goggins, no Jaden Williams. You've got all sorts of injuries up front, including Jacob Merrifield. You're really sort of piecing that thing together. Wendell Fullord a no-go last night, travel, didn't play. It's the same discussion that we've had with the wide receiver room, a whole lot of what if. Florida Atlantic has been able defensively to grind its way to positive results. They've been great with takeaways this season, but the depth has been nicked a little bit. And I think that you saw that the defense, once you started to have to dig into that depth, like when you're digging into sand and you're a kid and you hit that level of sand where it's wet underneath, where the moisture is gone. That's where FAU has found itself, digging into the defensive depth chart, and the depth, clearly it's not there. There's a gulf between the dry part of the sand and the wet part of the sand, that has led to some pretty astronomical yards against numbers in the last couple of weeks. So certainly that will be addressed in the offseason as well. And honestly, in the last 3 weeks of the year, I'm curious how the coaching staff now is going to handle this, because it is true evaluation mode at this point. What do you have on this roster? What can you apply for 2025? Who can you count on? Who do you want to focus on? You don't want to just abandon your seniors and say, thanks for playing, au revoir. It's the first time French has been spoken ever on this podcast, by the way. But you also want to work in some of the youth, some of the green guys, and some of the more raw talent players that you've got, and see what's there. Can that raw talent exist outside the practice field? Can that raw talent translate to live action in a game that counts? And so I'm curious how much of that gets sprinkled in, while also making sure that these veterans are still getting what they need from a football perspective. We know the quarterback position. This is going to be Kasen Weisman, keys to the car. What about defensively? Do you start to see more youth at linebacker get rotated in? Do you start to see more youth along the defensive front get rotated in? CJ Hurd, do you tell him, hey, this defense is yours now. You're the one who's going to be organizing this thing. Go get it. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And I'm sure that's something, though, that has already started circling the mind of Tom Herman. Because it is evaluation mode. It is evaluation mode now. It's just how much evaluation are you doing with youngsters, while also making sure you respect the veterans that you've had, that you have leaned on to help set a culture base. The culture is fine at Florida Atlantic. Great guys, pulling in the same direction, giving maximum effort. From that standpoint, things are great. The results just haven't been there, but you've got to weigh this. And so that's going to be the fascinating question going into Temple next Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Who plays where for how long, as that evaluation process begins, right? But this has been a lost year for Florida Atlantic. And the subject of players checking out has come up multiple times to me since the end of the game last night. Fans, and we talked a little bit about it on the broadcast near the conclusion of this one, but the subject of players checking out. What's there to play for any longer? And it's a valid question. It's college sports. These are young men. You feel mentally beaten down. It's easy to say, I quit. That goes for any walk of life, right? Not just football. I do think football is a microcosm of life a lot of the time. I've grown to be a bigger believer of that in past years than I've been previously, trying to separate sports and life, but I understand the overlap. Here's why I don't think checkout is a massive concern for Florida Atlantic. Have I been around FAU teams where players checking out has been a huge concern, and it's come to be? Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I admit that for sure. I don't think that there's going to be widespread, notorious examples of that on this football team. One, because of what I just mentioned, the culture. Tom Herman and the staff have done a good job of making sure that everybody stays forward thinking, forward moving, even when this season's crumbling around them It's largely been, all right, what's next? What's next? What's next? Keep that chin up. Let's go. Like, that matters. That does matter when you're building a football culture, okay? And you do that in the hopes that it is going to eventually lead to those tallies in the win column. I think that in this day and age in college football as well, players understand, and I know for a fact that FAU coaches have also expressed the same type of sentiment. Even if you're not coming back to Florida Atlantic next year, you still have eligibility. You're going to go into the portal. You're going to dip your toe in, or you're going to full-fledged throw yourself in and say, I'm not coming back to Boca. Don't you want the best film possible? Don't you want to still get out on that field, give maximum effort, pop on film so that your next school, your next coaching staff sees that and says, we absolutely want to sign that guy. And we want to make sure he has NIL incentive to come to the school. I know it seems a little bit dark and morbid to be discussing from an FAU perspective why guys should give effort, because it means that they're going to pop more to coaches of other programs who are going to try to poach them. I know that seems backwards and counterproductive, but I'm just being realistic. I'm just living in college football reality right now. Why in God's name would you quit on this football team when, if you have designs of leaving, this is now a job interview for you? Pouting, giving up, throwing a helmet, refusing to go in the game, refusing to practice, having a bad attitude, being a bad example for those around you. How is that going to help you at your next stop? How is that going to help you get recruited at a place that you believe may have greener pastures for you? It's not. It's going to be a detriment. It's going to potentially make you one of the cautionary tales of a guy who goes into the portal and then just stays lost in the portal and doesn't find a home because your attitude stinks and your effort sucks. And when the going got tough, you just threw up the white flag. So that's why I don't think there's going to be widespread checkout with this football team. And it's not going to be the majority of these players who are giving maximum effort so that they can show at their next stop that they're capable of going to their new school and being a massive contributor. Not the majority of these FAU players are going to treat the next 3 weeks as a job interview for their next stop, okay? But are there going to be a couple of them? Yeah, sure. And I think that you're delusional if you don't think that's the case. But my overall point is, I don't want this to get lost. My overall point is, they're not going to quit on this football team, this 2024 Florida Atlantic team, because this team is full of smart guys who understand the ramifications of what the next 3 weeks still are, even if they're not going to be able to play in a postseason game, okay? And then there are the guys who have nothing but confidence they're returning to Florida Atlantic next year, and they want to make sure that they are impact players who are depended upon, who are considered leaders, who want to help finally dig this program out of the depths that it finds itself in. Okay? There's the other side of it. And I believe and trust in the personalities on this team. And you got to be around them to truly get it. And I'm not trying to flex here about that. I'm just saying there is discipline on this team and there is desire on this team, even though this season has really been difficult for everybody, especially on that roster. And these guys still don't go. They don't sulk. They don't fight each other. They don't bicker. They don't set bad examples. They don't have a crap attitude. They have continued, even at the hotel yesterday before the game. It's, man, go out, beat these guys, get back home. Like, there was still a belief there. Even if they haven't been shown much in the way of that belief turning into anything positive for them this season. And still there's the belief, right? That means something. And that's a reflection of Tom Herman, I think, a reflection of the coaching staff, and a reflection of the character of this collective unit at FAU. For whatever that's worth, right? So there's that component of it, why I don't think players are going to check out. All right? Two-pronged. This is a job interview for your next stop, if you feel so inclined. This is also a job interview for you to be massively exhibited within the rotation next year, whatever position you play, and be a significant contributor to helping restore this FAU football franchise. Then there's this part of it, and I'm a big believer in legacy. And maybe this doesn't apply as much to players in modern college football when there is so much movement, when certainly more than ever before, there's less of a connection between player and institution, player and school pride, just because of how fluid everything is and the quick stop nature of college football. But I am a big believer in legacy. I'm not the only one. It's not just isolated to me. If I were a Florida Atlantic player, I would not be quitting because, one, playing football rules, but two, I need to create more separation from myself and my 2024 team compared to what is the benchmark for the worst team in Florida Atlantic football history, that 2011 side that went 1-11. The lone victory over UAB in the second to last game of the season. Just think about it. This year, Florida Atlantic, yes, they have 2 wins, but they have just as many FBS victories as the 2011 team. So this 2024 team right now with 3 games left to go, still in the neighborhood of that 2011 team. As we discussed a couple of weeks ago, the FAU passing game, still in the neighborhood of how ineffective, both on the scoreboard and numerically, tangibly in the stat column, that program record worst passing game was, right? You'd like to continue to create more separation there. You'd like to not necessarily be on the same plane as those back-to-back 3-9 teams in the Charlie Partridge era, right? You if you can win out, you have 5 wins, and you say, you know what, we fought at the end. We were 1 win away from bowl eligibility. If you hang on against North Texas, you get to 6 wins, and the whole scope of this thing changes. From a legacy standpoint, I would much rather say, yeah, we were a team that, much like in the Willie Taggart era, just couldn't find that one final win to get ourselves into the postseason, but we won our final 3, and we're very proud of that. And if we hung on against North Texas, we'd be playing in a bowl game. I'd much rather 10 years from now be telling my coworkers, my family members, my kids, my teammates, FAU fans, yeah, I was part of that team, as opposed to, yeah, we won as many FBS games as the 2011 Florida Atlantic football team. I'd much rather be talking about being 1 game away from bowl eligibility than saying, yeah, much like 2014, 15, 16, we just could not get over the hump of 3 wins for the season. Okay, so from a legacy standpoint, that matters. That matters. And I think it matters to some of the players. I'm not saying that it supersedes the desire to just make sure you have good film and you're putting yourself in a position to play either at FAU or somewhere next year. But I'm saying I do think that matters in the grand scheme of things. And I know if I was on this FAU football roster, it would matter to me how people view my 2024 team 10, 15 years down the road. Okay. It's just something that was bouncing around in my head last night on the trip home from Greenville. So yeah, listen, in the final 3 games, there are still reasons to watch. It is evaluation. It's also going to be, and this is going to be a term that you're going to hear a lot over the next couple of weeks and certainly over the next couple of months, and that is player retention. Tom Herman's talked about player acquisition. That's recruiting. That's the portal. That's using NIL. That's making sure you can acquire players. Using NIL in discussion of building rosters, starting to phase that out. It's player acquisition now. In college football, player acquisition. Become familiar with that. That's what that means, all right? But player retention is a big part of this as well, and maybe just as important. Player retention means that in this era of college football, where there's so much movement, one school to another, sometimes for some players 2, 3, 4 times, player retention means that you did the impossible in some situations, and you kept talent for a second or a third year on your football roster, okay? I came up, and this is not the end-all, be-all list, but this is just, for me, right now, the 6 names that, based on how they've played with the opportunities they've gotten, I think that you're going to see them in the final 3 weeks maybe get some more time, be relied upon even more so than they've already been, in the hopes that that faith from the coaching staff will help the process of player retention. Or at least I believe the coaching staff to believe these names are going to be priorities from a player retention standpoint for 2025. And there are going to be more names that the coaching staff is keyed in on and honed in on to keep, to retain for 2025. But this is my Ken LaVicka list of the 6 names that I would, for whatever it's worth, I would go out of my way to put the spotlight on when it comes to player retention for 2025, now that a bowl game is out of the question for FAU. First and foremost, no surprise here, CJ Hurd. I just wonder, going into Temple, if CJ Hurd is told, hey, this is your side of the ball, and you're a leader. Going to let you have the opportunity to keep this thing organized. Go ball. Injuries have thrust him into a starting safety role, so this is a reinforcement of, hey, CJ, this is your side of the ball now. Freshman, go play. Go continue to mold yourself. You're in extreme talent. Here are the keys. CJ Hurd, first and foremost. I have fallen in love with the play of Amari Hayes. Amari Hayes is a smart football player. When plays break down, he helps his quarterback, gets into space, becomes an option, makes difficult catches, takes big hits, doesn't shy away from contact, is a dog. He wants to go out there. He wants to win. He reminds me a lot of LeJontay Wester, and I know that that's such a lazy comparison because there's only one LeJontay Wester. He's going to be, as he said this week to media, and I believe him with his FAU and Colorado film, at first a third-round pick. I believe it. That kid says it. I believe it because I'm a believer in LeJontay Wester. I'm just saying I see flashes of LeJontay and the way Amari Hayes makes himself available, makes himself dangerous in that wide receiver group, okay? So Amari Hayes, number 10. That's my second of the 6 player retention targets with his FAU football team in the final 3 games. And then after, Leon Washington, fellow receiver. There's a lot there. He hasn't popped as much as Amari Hayes, but Leon Washington has something to work with. Wily football player, intelligent football player, dangerous football player. I think Leon Washington fits into that player retention group that I put together. Along the defensive line, Gavin Marcelin, number 90. I think he is, on the defensive side of the ball, a major player retention target. Gavin Marcelin had a sack last night. He has, over the last couple of weeks, had his name said more and more and more. He's been more of a presence there on the field. His injuries have taken a bit of a toll on that defensive line, and Marcelin has earned more playing time, more run, and I think you're going to hear a lot from 90 in the final 3 weeks of the season. Big, impactful young man along that defensive line. Daughtry Richardson is going to, again, this is all my opinion, but a must retain on that offensive line. Florida Atlantic replacing 4 or 5 starters this year, and it's led to some ragged play. Florida Atlantic's going to be in a similar situation going into next year. A lot of turnover on that offensive line. And so Daughtry Richardson, who's gotten a whole lot of run on that offensive front, retaining him is going to be important so that you don't have to go a full 5 new offensive line starters. You need someone who knows the system, someone who's been there, someone who's put the reps in, and someone who's going to continue to improve. And Daughtry Richardson meets that criteria. And I don't even think this is pending the final 3 weeks. I do think that there's benefit to focusing on Kasen Weisman as a player to retain, especially at that position. And you just get the sense that Weisman is starting to put enough on film that quarterback-hungry programs, which is pretty much all of them, are going to see the potential of Weisman. The reason he was a 3-4-star borderline recruit, started his college experience at Colorado. You're starting to see some of the trademarks of that, some of the traits. There are going to be colleges that other schools, other programs that take a serious interest in number 12 in an FAU uniform, especially as he takes over this offense the final 3 weeks. You never know the direction that a college football coaching staff is going to go in, because quarterback is obviously the most prime position in the sport. And this FAU coaching staff is going to have to determine Cam Fancher, is he going to be the incumbent starter? Is he going to be part of a quarterback competition going into next year? Are we going to open it up and actually go through a quarterback competition? Just what is the future of that quarterback position? Kasen Weisman, I think from a player retention standpoint, he comes into the discussion. Even if, and I'm just forecasting ahead, even if Kasen Weisman comes in with a quarterback battle and doesn't win the quarterback battle in 2025, the fact that you have a backup quarterback that you seemingly trust, that knows your system, that understands the expectation, and has started to realize potential within this FAU organization, I think that means something. And I think that's why Kasen Weisman, for a multitude of reasons, is a player retention target here in the final 3 weeks. So again, these are the 6 that come to mind for me when you're discussing focus of retaining for 2025, putting resources toward. Hurd, Hayes, Leon Washington, Gavin Marshall, and Daughtry Richardson, Kasen Weisman. Hurd the safety, Hayes the wide receiver, Washington the wide receiver, Marshall in the defensive lineman, Richardson the tackle, and Kasen Weisman the quarterback. You tell me who you think should be the major focus of player attention for next year for Florida Atlantic. Go ahead and tweet at me at KLV Says, at KLV Says. Hit me up on Instagram at Ken LaVicka. Let me know, and we'll go through it on the next edition of the Florida Atlantic Voice. That'll do it for this day after a lost season. Florida Atlantic loses to East Carolina 49-14, and it's evaluation mode from here on out for Florida Atlantic. We're presented by Robes Law Group, our title sponsor. I want to thank all the folks at Robes Law Group, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. In the community for you, office is Delray Beach. That's Robes Law Group, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. Don't forget to tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies about the Florida Atlantic Voice, the Inside Florida Atlantic podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, it's all there for you. Just subscribe to it. It comes right to your phone. You don't even have to seek it out. It's right there for you. Make it easy on yourself. The Florida Atlantic Voice podcast presented by Robes Law Group, wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of it. And the season's not over yet. From a schedule standpoint, still 3 games left to go. The season is over from a hitting your goal, which was 6 wins. But all the same, now a fascinating time, a fascinating sequence in Florida Atlantic football history. We're about to embark on it because we're kind of entering the great unknown here. Final 3 weeks. What does it mean? Well, we're about to find out. So I think there is plenty of reason to continue to pay attention on this season because there are a lot of question marks going into the final 3 weeks, and it'll be fascinating to see how Tom Herman and company tackle those question marks. We'll talk to you next time. This has been the Florida Atlantic Voice. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.